Hi guys, today we're going to learn how to sew or how to clip and notch and the difference between the two. So first we're going to take a concave curve and notice that it curves up like a smile. And I have sewed around the edges and left an open spot so that we can turn our curve at a later time. We're going to sew the curve. Notice that it's already pinned, and so we're just going to start sewing. We're going to sew at a 5/8 seam allowance, and we will back stitch, so we're going to take a couple stitches forward first. Remember to hold those threads when you start sewing and then back stitch. And then a couple stitches forward again. Sewing at that 5/8 seam allowance. When you come to a pin, remove the pin. And back stitching at the end once more. So after the threads have been cut and you have a clean edge, you're going to take a good pair of fabric shears, and on a concave curve, so it smiles up, it curves up like a smile, so that's a concave curve, we are going to clip that curve. And when you're clipping, you want to go right up to, but not through, the stitching. And remember that we never want to have our shears actually cross the stitching line because we don't want to accidentally snip too far. And then we're going to turn our curve. So we're going to just turn it right side out here. And then with the use of a point turner, you can turn that curve. Okay. And then when you lay it flat, that curve lays nice and flat, and then you press it. Now we're going to press the curve so that it lays nice and flat, and that seam is right there at the top, and it looks great. Now we're going to notch a convex curve. So a convex curve curves out like this. It goes down like a frown. So we're going to sew our curve at a 5/8 seam allowance, and again, we remember to hold those tails as we start sewing. Take a couple stitches forward, and then we back stitch, and continue going. When you reach a pin, go ahead and yank it out. So after the threads have been clipped and you have removed it from the sewing machine, you're going to take a nice pair of sewing shears, and when you notch it, you're going to make little triangles in the seam allowance. And again, you want to go clear up to, but not through, that seam line. And just as with clipping, with notches, the more frequent and smaller notches that you do, the easier it's going to be to turn, the flatter the curve will lay, and the easier it will be to replicate. When you're ready to turn the curve, again, we left a side open here so that we can turn it nice and easily. And you just turn that right side out, and you'll use your point turner again to poke the curve out a little bit more and get those corners nice and tight. Pressing the curve helps bring that seam right to the top. And we have that seam is right on the top of the curve so that it lays nice and flat and it looks appealing. Remember to clip a concave curve and notch a convex curve so that it lays flat when it's all finished.